Welcome to the Eating at a Meeting podcast. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, dietary needs expert, certified meetings manager, certified food protection manager. I have searched the globe to find people and businesses who are creating safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experiences for their employees, guests, and communities. In each episode, you will find authentic conversations about how food and beverage impacts inclusion, sustainability, culture, community, health, and wellness. I know that sounds like a lot, but we're going to cover it all. Are you ready to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line? If so, let's go.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the Eating at a Meeting podcast. It is Women's History Month, or as I call it, Herstory Month. And I love interviewing women who are doing very cool things in food and beverage or breaking barriers in food and beverage. And that is exactly what my guest today is doing in Las Vegas. Her name, Cinthia Pedroza. Hello, Cinthia. How are you?
Good morning.
She is the executive director of food and beverage at Resorts World Las Vegas. And this is a humongous resort that opened in 2021, right? And made a humongous splash to the Strip. So welcome to the show, Cinthia. And I can't wait to have you share with everybody what you manage with food and beverage.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Having the opportunity to share what we have to offer at Resorts World is incredible. We're very proud of what we've accomplished. So I'm very happy to be able to share.
Well, tell everybody, what does the executive director of food and beverage do at Resorts World?
Well, I oversee everything that you eat or drink in the resort has something to do with me, right? We have in our restaurants over 40 food concepts to choose from between owned and operated restaurants, leased partners, and partnerships that we've created with some restaurateurs around the planet. I also oversee our banquet team. We have over 250,000 square foot of banquet space. So all of the groups and conventions that come, I oversee that. And the last, but the most fun part is probably the pool. We have a 5-acre pool.
What?
Yes. Our pool is 5 acres. It's divided between a family pool that had like a little splash pad for kids, our main pool, and another one that is called Bimini Pool, 3 full bars, and a full service restaurant that is probably the best food you could have in the summer.
Wow. Okay. I would never have thought you would add in there that, oh yeah, I oversee the pool, but there's a restaurant at the pool. And wow, that's a lot. And 42 food concepts in the meeting space. That's a lot of food and beverage you manage.
That is a lot. Sometimes when the resort is on full force, it's a lot. It's a little overwhelming at times.
So how do you, and I'm very curious, so you've got a really long light item budget for food and beverage, and for the concepts that are leased, so you oversee the food that gets ordered for them? Is that how that works? I don't understand. I don't know that. So I'm curious.
So for our leased concepts, I don't. We have 4 leased concepts on the property: a steakhouse, a caviar and seafood restaurant, an Italian restaurant, and a Spanish tapas restaurant. So those 4 concepts are a leased venue. So they have their own vendors and team members and everything. We really don't oversee what they do with the rent space. We have a few spaces that are partner venues, which we do oversee, right? We have Viva Mexican Restaurant by Ray Garcia. We have Wally's, and we have Crossroads Kitchen, a full fine dining vegan plant-based restaurant.
Wow.
Yes, which is so cool.
Yeah.
It is incredible. And we have Doghouse, the sports bar. So those are partnership restaurants. And then on top of those, we have the ones that we own and operate.
Wow. And that's I think you said before the show, that's about 1,800 employees.
Yes. Right around there.
Front end of the house and the back of the house?
Yes. We are the largest division on property.
Okay. Well, okay. Which then blows my mind in a whole nother way, is because when we're looking at a meeting planning side of this thing, is like food and beverage is sometimes the last thing that meeting planners focus on, but it is the number one budget line item on their budgets. and it is also your largest employee pool.
It is one of the largest employee pools.
Yeah.
And also one of it's probably the largest contributor of revenue for the property in food and beverage, and with the healthiest profit margins. So that one is a very important piece of our business.
Right. So then you have a very important job. So one of the questions that I came up with to ask you was that, how do you orchestrate the food and beverage? Because I know you, and before the show, you say you're bringing some new concepts in and for restaurants wise, but how do you overall orchestrate a food and beverage program that harmonizes with the resort's overall theme? Because, and again, before we got on the show on air, we were talking about how Resorts World brought a very Asian influence to the Strip that was not there before. So how did that, and I know you weren't there for the pre-planning, but as you're doing that now, how do you orchestrate all of that?
I think that now that we've been alive for almost 3 years, it's when we really get some background to understand what our guests want, right? So within our food hall, it was, I'm going to say 80% Asian concepts, right? From Singapore, Malaysia, Japanese, Chinese, a little bit of everything. And that was very attractive for our Asian clientele, but we needed to level what we had for Western offerings. And then, so we have changed a few concepts. We opened a burger barn that is super attractive. We had in our theater concerts with Luke Bryan or Carrie Underwood. So that was a burger before the show. That was perfect. So that was a concept that really resonated with some of our audiences. On top of that, we also opened a fried chicken concept, which is phenomenal. The most recent concept we rebranded was a fish and chips stall. And so that is just in our food hall area. So the variety and the things that we need to provide to our guests, and really that guest has spoken about, have helped us a lot. And when it comes to our sit down restaurants, every hotel on the Strip, or most hotels on the Strip, we have an Italian, a steakhouse, Japanese, Chinese, Mexican, and an American. And we have added the plant-based, fully plant-based fine dining restaurant. So we are always looking for things that are going to set us apart one step at a time. Like we spoke before the show, in the summer, we are adding a concept called Stubborn Seed by Chef Jeremy Ford. He has a concept in Miami, and we are adding one here. And then we are also adding a hot pot concept by Happy Lamb. So that's going to come in June, and probably Chef Ford is going to come in the fall.
Okay. Wow. And because you know who your clientele are, you know where they're coming from. And so you're addressing kind of their cultural philosophies or cultural beliefs and where they live into the menus that you're doing.
In many ways, yes. Right. In Vegas, people are on vacation here, but also having something to relate to when you're on vacation, something that it's really helpful. We have a very large Asian community in Las Vegas. And now we are known to the local market, which is super important to us. Right. As locals, we don't come to the Strip very often. And for them to come here to try our concepts, it's very important. And it speaks volumes about the quality of the items that we have been able to execute.
That's interesting because you said most people that live there don't come to the Strip. They just kind of avoid it because there's all kinds of crazy meeting planners and tourists that are on this Strip. Yeah. So bringing that in, because I think we've seen that in media that hotels do need to rely on the local community to fill their restaurants or fill their spaces for day staycations, etc. And it may not necessarily be the case for Vegas all the time, but you're finding that it is important. So that's interesting.
Very important. And we learned the hard way during the pandemic, right? And having guests from the local market come visit, it was very important to us. It is a very important part of what we do.
Well, that's very cool, because then they can talk about, hey, you need to come here and go to this hotel with me or things like that. With this large amount of food and beverage, how does Resorts World, how are you innovating to reduce food waste and sourcing ingredients sustainably? You all are in Las Vegas, so you're not plethora of fruits and vegetables, et cetera. So how do you manage that, the sustainability side of it? Because next week actually is, I was reading before we got it, is Food Waste Prevention Week. So I'm really intrigued in how a big property like yours manages it.
So nothing grows in our backyard, right? So that is hard. But we are a stone throw away to California, which a lot of stuff does grow there, and we are able to rely on them. But as a property, we have a whole sustainability program and division that is under facilities that oversees all that. At first, we were looking at food waste, which is large in Las Vegas, right? Mainly from the catering side. But we were looking at even waste from our employee dining room. So we launched a program in which we put little snippets of information of how much food gets wasted by you eat with your eyes. You go into a buffet or an employee dining room and your plate is this big and you eat just a little bit, right? So something as easy as changing how many times you could go through the turnstiles so that you don't fill your plate, but you eat what you put on your plate, what you're going to eat, basically.
Right.
So those little messages were in there, and you can feed a family of 4 with the waste that comes out of our employee dining room, right? So that resonates with our team members, and we are very lucky to have a strong culture in the property, and people listen. I don't know if it's because we are still kind of new or we have done a really good job of communicating, but our team members listen and care about others. So that really helps with our efforts of sustainability and giving back to the community and those things, right? We have a program that's called the World of Difference, which is volunteer opportunities for everyone in the resort. We have a team that puts out what is there to do this week, right? Even if it's to clean the animal shelter, to prepare bags of food, or a race, or anything that can be done as volunteer work, we have that available to us almost every week.
That's awesome. And do a lot of people take you up on or participate in those things?
Yes, from different divisions. In food and beverage, it's a little harder to get us out there because the races are on Saturdays, or we can't get out on a Saturday morning. We have to work on a Saturday morning, but we have had opportunities to go and do it at times where we are not that busy. And a lot of people want to give time and want to give back to the community. So we have been able to do that.
That's fantastic. Okay, I want to jump back to the cultural aspect of the food and beverage. The fact that you recognize that you've got a diverse audience of guests who come in there, as well as the guests of the meetings that are held in the hotel. How do you apply that cultural diversity that you have in the restaurant concepts into the catering menus? And I did look at your menus, and I do see that you've labeled them for allergens. Oh my gosh, thank you very much for that. I was very impressed that you do have them labeled. So how do you help meeting planners address or approach the different diversity of their guests through the catering menus?
So I think that within our menus, we have a little bit for everyone, but there's also going to be one meeting planner that doesn't really want the traditional catering menu.
Just one?
Want a different experience. Or why can't I have the steakhouse menu? Or why can't I have the fully vegan? Well, we have that too. We have a menu that was created Taste of Resorts World, and we have items that each restaurant has provided the recipes to our banquet team, and we feature items from all of our restaurants in our menus. Right? We do receptions, and we have this beautiful catering booths with each restaurant's name and an item from their menu. So I think that the catering world has also changed, and decisions are made at a different time, and guests are looking for an experience and not a classroom setting with a buffet. That's not the jam anymore, right? So
yes.
It has pushed us to come with more innovative ideas. How do we make it fun? How do we make it interactive? How do guests have a memory, or how do they remember that at Resorts World they had this, and where can they have it again? So having really the talented group of chefs that I have, I am very lucky. They almost never say no, which is outstanding.
That's surprising. Yeah, exactly.
But we have been able to create those things because they have the willingness to help the guests and create something unique.
Okay. So, and I've heard this stat, they're like 80% of our menus are custom designed. I mean, do you find that to be true, or do you find?
I don't know if 80%, that seems like a lot, right? But because we have a standard menu that we would like, that we start with, there is things that we kind of can swap or change or substitute. So there's always that, but it is a high percentage, and it depends on the group and where the group is coming from and how many guests and what can we accommodate. So
right. Yeah. Okay. How do you, like I said, I appreciate the fact that you're labeling the menus with allergens. How does that play into designing different menus? Can meeting planners really work with the chefs on the team to address different allergens?
Yes.
Okay.
So that is an incredibly important part of the catering manager, right? And making sure that they ask the right questions for us to be able to provide a successful experience for our guests, right? So that's where it all starts. Having the knowledge of how to produce a fully plant-based meal is incredible for our chefs because we can do anything. And if we know in advance, we can make anything happen. That has been really a blessing for all of us.
Well, and I think having that restaurant too, that opens up a whole new wealth of knowledge of ways to do that on the banquet side too.
Yes.
And I'm assuming that all of that food in that completely vegan restaurant is delicious because you're not going to put it out. And so that can turn it, because typical kind of vegan menu options or plant-based menus are like, here's some pasta.
No, ours is incredible. If you have an opportunity, look at Crossroads Kitchen. It's Chef Tal Ronan out of LA.
Okay.
He's got 2 spots in California, one in Calabasas and one in Melrose. And this was his first in Las Vegas. But the whole menu, everything, you can't tell that it's plant-based a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Wow. It's incredible. It's incredible.
That's awesome. I'm going to have to come eat there when I think for IMAX is the first time I'm going, or in August. I'll come and visit you in August.
Okay, please do. Please do.
Okay. All right. Awesome. So now let's get to, because it's Women's History Month, and I really want to, you've got a 25-year career in food and beverage. And we have a comment here. Hang on. Julia just typed in, Crossroads is amazing. Thanks for letting us. Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Julia, for piping in. 25 years career in food and beverage. And I find it amazing that you've stuck with it this whole time and not like, oh, I give up on this. But how managing the food and beverage that you do at the Resorts World, it's huge. It's huge. It's a grand scale. So what advice would you give people coming into the industry, or people even who've been in the industry already, to advance to like you have and to this level?
Stick with it, right? You are, there's going to be many obstacles in your career, but I think that taking every opportunity that there is to grow and expand, and even if it's not my perfect example, I started my career with Four Seasons and I was with them for 16 years. So I was used to the luxury of Four Seasons, the way things were done, and an opportunity came to open a hotel downtown Las Vegas. Going from Four Seasons to downtown Las Vegas was a cultural shock in every way, right? I came from a property that had 3 restaurants to one that had 17, and I couldn't find the beginning or the end, but it was incredible, and I would do it again because I learned so much just to multitask and to manage a different culture, a different dynamic of the team, in creating or attempting to create a culture for an opening. All of those things were an incredible learning experience. So even if it's not in your wheelhouse, go try it. I think that is very valuable, and that taught me a huge lesson. And eventually I ended up back in the luxury world with Resorts World.
That's awesome. Now, based on I did an episode yesterday, and because you're talking about leading people from both sides, you've got the kitchen and you have the front of the house. And yes, the other day I had an experience. I was asking somebody what was in the ingredients, and she's like, well, that's secret. They don't tell us. I can't tell you. And I'm like, Okay. And they're like, well, I just wanted to know if there was gluten in the grits and she's like, it's a secret recipe. I'm like, and then I was just telling it to another person who used to manage restaurants. And she's like, yeah, a lot of the servers who go to the back of the house to ask the questions like, hey, what's in this? They get yelled at because they're like, I'm too busy. I can't answer those questions. And why are you bothering me with that? So my question to you is, and I've seen a disconnect from the front of the house and the back of the house. As the person overseeing them, how do you create that connection to the front of the house and the back of the house? Because I think it's super important. Your servers are your front ambassadors.
Mm-hmm. It's so hard. But it's so hard. It's so hard because there's always going to be a battle. But I think that a lot of it comes to leading by example. I am a true partner with my executive chef. Our communication, and we can be transparent, honest, and candid with each other when those things happen. And then from there to the general manager, the executive chef of the restaurant, right? They have to have that relationship and that trust. And then training, right? The servers need to know the ingredients. And if there is something that is out of the ordinary, they should feel free to come and talk to the chef. Don't talk to the cooks, talk to the chef, right? There has to be a guidelines for them to follow. Because you have 15 tickets in the window, all of the cooks are making something, and you come in and ask, where's the eggs for 32? No, you talk to the chef, or the manager talks to the chef. So you have to implement processes and procedures that they have to follow to avoid those things. Mm-hmm. But I really think that the relationship between my chef and I, the GM and the chef, and one by one, sometimes it's surprising to them. They're like, oh, yeah. Look, they can talk to each other. Why can't I talk to the chef? Right? So, yes, you can. It's another person. Treat each other with respect and you can do it.
Right. Exactly. So, okay, on that note, are there any unforgettable moments or particular challenge your team overcame that guests might not see the front of the house, but was pivotal in enhancing their dining experience?
I think I read that question 4 times and I can't still come up with an answer. No.
Or just something that you guys realize in the back of the house, you're like, oh, wow, we can do this.
I think that is huge in the banquet world. We just did a Forbes event and the gala dinner was for 700 guests. And it was in one of our ballrooms that has a smaller kitchen in the back. And it was a tremendous success. We received incredible comments. But there was blood, sweat, and tears in the back of the house from all of us, right? The elevator broke and they had to haul everything up and down the stairs. One door wasn't big enough to fit a double hot box through the doors to get to the other floor. We had to plate, and I was proud of myself. I helped garnish one of the dish. But when you have a dinner for such high end and for so many guests, you have to make sure that 750 plates go out in unison within a 10-minute span, right? So you have to have 6 or 8 lines of plating. So all of that organization and all of that planning, it's huge to make it successful on the day off. On any kind of event of that magnitude, the culinary team takes a beating. The culinary team and then the stewarding team. Right? Because after that, before, we have to make sure that we have all of the equipment, china, glass, silver, plate, where everything has to be there. Stewarding has to have it for the kitchen. Then the kitchen needs to execute and the front of the house needs to deliver. And then once we're all beat up and tired, stewarding needs to clean up, right? So it never ends, and you have to recognize all of those efforts because they're huge, and guests would never know what you do in the back there. It's incredible.
I did an event last year and I needed them to flip a room in like 45 minutes from 200 this way to 500 this way. And they did it in like 45 minutes. And it's so amazing that they know their jobs. And I also think they love their jobs. They love what they do and they value. I took a picture of them all. I'm like, and high-fived them all. I'm like, you guys are amazing, because it does take training and it does take practice to get all of that succinct.
Yes, lots of practice, lots of training, and a good leader, and somebody that is going to understand their struggles and know the job, because that is really important for the hourly team members, right? They need to know that we know what they're going through and we feel their pain, we're not just telling them to do something without knowing what it takes to complete it.
Right. Okay. On that note, a little bit of a tangent here. I'm assuming that not every single person speaks English.
Mm.
And so how do you manage that cultural relationship within the workplace? I mean, I'm sure there's more than just English and Spanish. I mean, there's Chinese, Japanese. How do you manage that cultural language difference within your workforce?
So there's the English and Spanish is probably the easiest because a lot of people speak Spanish, including myself, right? So that one is easy for me to manage. That one I'm good. But when I came here, my Chinese cooks, none of them speak English, right? Only one of the chefs speaks a little bit and the other chef doesn't speak English, so, right? So the translating and the understanding, that makes it fun eventually. I like it. I think it's a lot of fun, and you learn the little words and then they think it's funny when you say them. But I think in the end, a big smile, hand gestures, the big eyes when you don't know what something means, people understand that. And it's just a lot of times it's feelings. And I go back to my executive chef. He speaks a little Japanese, a little Chinese. He understands a lot because he's been in the Asian market for a little bit. And he is probably the kindest soul that I've ever worked with. So people feel that and people understand that. That is really important.
And that goes a long way because it's not just what we say, it's how we react and how our facial expressions and our body language. I mean, there's lots of research about that. So I like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So how do you want to be remembered in history? Just throwing that out at you.
I think, and I've been really lucky. This is in my career, I've worked seriously this is probably the fourth company, right? Many years of experience, but few companies. And I go back to the Four Seasons here in Las Vegas about once a year. And the team members that were there from when I was there still remember me. And it feels so good to get a hug from a server or a bartender or somebody that I work with. And they remember the fun parts. I'm glad they don't remember when I get mad, but they remember the fun parts, the things that we did together, the things that we accomplished together, and that I knew the names of their kids, and that when they needed time off to take their kids to the doctor, I gave them that time off. But when it was time to work, I was there with them. So I think that to me, the legacy as a person is a heartfelt leader that understood what their struggles were.
That's awesome. And I think in the fact that one, they're still there. And you and I were talking about this at the beginning. There are so many job opportunities within our industry. And there are so many people, especially I'm going to say on the banquet side of it, who've had their jobs for 25, 30 years and they love it. And my question to you is, why do they love it so much?
The banquet world is a different world. And I don't know about other markets, but in Las Vegas is probably the highest paid job you can have if you land an A-list banquet job, right? And those are the people that don't leave. And my husband does this for a living. My husband is right? And he has a couple of houses that he loves and will never leave. But he also can go up in the seniority list until people don't retire, right? They just leave this earth, and then a spot opens up. But it gives you the freedom of picking your schedule. And once you get up in the seniority list, you can pick the functions that you want to work, the days that you want to work. You can take that time off when you want to. And again, I think that the money that is in the banquet world is why they don't leave, because they can't. Yeah. You can't find another job that pays as much as banquet does.
Wow. And it's a hard job.
It is a hard job. And especially with the size of our hotels, right? And you think about, and my husband told me this story, you think about a 6,000 people lunch at Mandalay Bay, you have to haul a tray for 2 miles to get to your table, right? So it is a hard job.
And that's 10 plates full of food. Yeah. So you have to have that. You got to have all kinds of strength.
Yes, you have to have a lot of strength. Your feet take a beating, right? The other day, I came home and I said, oh my God, I did 18,000 steps today. I'm so tired. And I do them in high heels. And my husband's like, I do 32,000. Yes. Okay. Well, then you win.
But you got the high heels on. That equals it out. Yeah.
Yes. So, pedicures are important in our lives too.
Right. Yeah. Wow. 36,000. Wow. That's mind boggling. And it is. I mean, if you've not been to a hotel in Las Vegas, going from meeting space to meeting space into your hotel room, it's a hike.
Yeah. It's a hike. And for a team member, right, and in our property, the team member from the team member parking, it's a 10-minute walk to their department.
Oh,
right. So in and out. And once you worked all day and you're ready to go home and you have to walk for another 10 minutes, it's hard. It's hard work. Yes.
All right. So I want to jump to another thing because you said the word kitchen. How many kitchens do you have in resorts?
Oh, Jesus. You're really putting me on the spot in here. I have to count. But in our banquet space, we have 2 very large ones. One that services one side of the property and then another one, which is the main banquet kitchen where everything kind of comes out of, right? So that's 2. Then each restaurant has its own. So it's going to be 16 kitchens for the restaurants. Oh, and then 1 for the pool. So 17. And then we have a main kitchen that feeds all of our venues in the food hall, plus the team member dining, right? So what was that? Like 22 kitchens, I think, total?
Something like that, yeah.
Around 20 kitchens. Yes.
That's a lot of kitchens. Okay. That's a lot of kitchens. And you have to have oregano in every one of those kitchens, right?
Yes. But when one runs out, the other one has it, which is...
That's a good thing.
Yes.
Okay, so is there any words of wisdom that your mom, your aunt, your grandmother, or another woman in the industry gave you that sticks with you?
My mom always told me, look at each other, look at everybody as your equal. Never look people down or never look people up. You have the ability to command a room, and you can be a leader even when there's people that are above you, which was very important because in no shape or form it means any disrespect, but the fact that I believe that I can command a room no matter what, it just gives me the confidence to do it. So that really helped. And treat each other with respect, up or down or lateral. That is really important. That was... When I was at the Four Seasons, the golden rule was the big deal, right? Treat everybody as they want to be treated. And then at some point, one of my general managers, she said, you need to treat them how they want to be treated, not how you want to be treated. Mm-hmm. And that also stuck with me because it's true. What I like might not be what you like. So I have to learn to understand and know what you want so I can give it to you.
Right. Yeah. And you have to be available. You have to be willing to share. Yeah. My friend Steve, classic tense dude, just joined us on Instagram. Hello, Steve. And we've got Erin Tracy and Ginny Kent on here and Chef Shauna. I think I said that right. So thank you for joining us on Instagram. Okay. So I want to take that into, because I asked what advice you got. What advice would you give young women entering this industry and entering in the food and beverage? Because there's not a lot of women at your level in food and beverage and in the kitchen. On the banquet side, I would say, well, I'm going to say across the board. But so what advice do you give young women coming into the industry?
Don't let anything stop you, right? Don't think that because you are a woman, you can't do something. And not on the extreme feminist side, right? Because we are not, thankfully, saving lives in food and beverage, right? You're cooking. I can cook as good as you. You are servicing guests. You are good with numbers. You are good with people. Your talent will take you wherever you want to go. There's things that I cannot do. I can't cook, right? I mean, I can a little bit, but I don't have the talent. Find your talent and stick with it, right? And for me was really the people and building relationships and having people trust me and having people's backs and making sure that that you can make a change in people's lives just by caring for them and about what they have to do.
That's awesome. And how do you, okay, on that note, and speaking of young people, how are you managing, or how do you suggest or have found success in managing across generations? Because you've got people who have worked at the hotel for not in the industry for 30 something years, not at the hotel, but then you've got new people that are coming in that are on that C call list, right? Who want to be A's.
Yeah.
How do you do?
That is so hard because different generations have different ideas of what hard work means, right? And life has taught us that, or people have been lucky enough that not doing a whole lot gets them far, but not everybody has that luck. So it just understanding what hard work means for each person is hard, but it helps because then where you can place them in a way. And for me, I haven't managed hourly team members in a little bit. So it has been young supervisors, young managers, that want to grow in the industry. And I have been lucky enough to be able to give them that growth, not to everybody, but it's very, and I don't want to offend anybody, but it's really hard to make people understand that you have to put in the work if you want to see the results, right? It took me a long time to get to where I am. And I had to work the graveyard, and I had to work every weekend, and I had to sacrifice every Mother's Day and every Easter and every New Year's Eve and every Christmas for the first 12 years of my daughter's life, right? So those sacrifices, a lot of people might say are not worth it, but that also shaped me to what I am today and allowed me to be here. And now I have a 14-year-old daughter. So now I can spend Mother's Day with her. And now I can spend Christmas with her. Yes, I probably missed a lot of the really good years, but the sacrifices, in my point of view, sometimes are really worth the trouble.
And how do you feel she sees you as a working businesswoman or as just a mom?
No, I think I was recently in a panel and I asked her if she wanted to come be what?
You're going to make me cry.
So I might cry too. Oh my God. So her and my husband came and they were sitting in the last row and I was a little nervous. This was really the first time that she was going to see mom up there on a stage talking about myself and what I've done in my career. And when I came out, she gave me a big hug and she said, "Mom, I am so proud of you. How are you not nervous? How did you do so good?" That made me incredibly proud of what I've achieved and of her because she sees it.
Right.
Oh, oh my God. I'm ready for this.
I'm sorry. I was not either. Okay. So what, on that note, in the joy of that, right? What is the biggest joy you find in what you do?
When I am able to make a difference in people's lives. I think that when I first joined, or when I decided that hospitality was my career, when I was really a young chicken, I want to be in hotels because I want to travel the world and I want to see what's out there. And that starts to shape you personally, or to me. It really has shaped who I am. A lot of people say it's just a job, it's not who you are. To me, this is who I am. I am a mom, a daughter, a friend, and a director for the Beverage, right? This is who I am. This is what I do. And the ability that I have to make a difference in people's lives, I don't know what else would give me that ability, right? Caring for somebody that wants to do better, just picking them up and helping them get to where they want to go is probably the biggest satisfaction that this career has given me.
That's awesome. Okay, then on the opposite side of that, I probably should have asked this question first, but what's your biggest obstacle?
I think it has been a little bit of the gender equality has played in there, right? Because as you said earlier, there's not a lot of us, especially in Las Vegas, in our field that have been able to get to a director or a VP. I want to say there's 2 vice presidents in all of Las Vegas that are female.
Wow.
And that's a very small number. And I don't want to put it in gender, but I don't necessarily know what it is, right? I think that I've been lucky enough to have leaders that have believed in what I can do, and I have shown results, and they have helped me get to where I am. But I think that the obstacle is always going to be the people relate. How do I put this without offending anybody again? I'm never going to be part of the boys club. And the way I don't know, let's say a winemaker is going to speak to a male vice president to a female vice president, it's always going to be different. And it's good, bad, or indifferent. There is a difference on how we relate with each other. And building those relationships, sometimes it's difficult with the opposite sex. Right. But once you get there, it opens the doors. You just have to find something common. But I think that the biggest obstacle is the perception of, she's a girl, I really can't say those things in front of her. Or I can't take her to a strip club, right? It's just, I'll go. But those things are, I think that to me, that's probably the biggest obstacle.
Okay. And I think that's across the board, right? Figuring that out and how do you manage? How do you manage that? So, okay. So 2 more questions. What do you think the trends are shaping the dining in? Okay, I'm going to put this in 3 little parts. Shaping dining in Las Vegas, but also shaping women in the industry, food and beverage industry, and then for the future young kids coming in. Makes sense. That's a lot in one question.
That's a lot. But no, let me see if I can answer it all. I think that the biggest trend when it comes to dining is the experiential dining. And the experience, right? The supper clubs in here have made a huge impact and interacted. There is one in a property across the street. You can't get a reservation for 2 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And because it's not just about the food. It's about the food and the cocktails and the service and what you're doing while you're doing all of that, right? So there is a show in front of you, or the decor is impressive. We are so invaded with everything going on around us, like with technology, and everything that happens around us is that now we don't focus on one thing, right? So we're not focusing on the food and a wonderful wine. Now the cocktail has to have smoke or be set on fire, and you have to have monkeys dancing on one table. And there's like all of your senses have to be included in the experience. So the experiential dining and those memorable experience, I think that's kind of where we're all going. The hot pot experience that we're bringing in to the property, very interactive. You do a little bit of it, you learn new things, and you are doing something while you're eating. So I really think that's where we're going. As far as us as women in the industry, I think that we have some incredible talent and personalities in the mixology world, in the chef's world, that it is really our responsibility to keep bringing them up to take over when we're gone. And for me I have to make sure that I think this is for a lot of people, I have to make sure that I teach my team anything and everything that I know so that they can take over for me when I'm ready to move on. And a lot of the times people don't want to go of that power. Don't want to let go of that power, which makes it hard for us to dig in and try to find out on our own what we need to learn. And that comes back to relationships, I think.
Yeah.
Right. And keep pushing. We have to.
Yeah. That's a really good point, because it seems like sometimes it's a cat fight, and we don't need the cat fights, and we need to help each other prosper and get there. I need to introduce you to Randy Weinstein. She has an event in Charleston called FAB, Females in Business or Food and Beverage. You need to meet. Yeah. It's really, I'm actually going for the first time, but I interviewed her last year. So I will introduce the two of you. Okay. And so my final question, because I've already asked you how you want to be remembered in the world, but this is what I ask all of my guests. And what does it look like when I say safe, sustainable, and inclusive food and beverage experience? What does that mean to you?
The safe, to me, goes immediately back to the Southern Nevada Health District regulations, right? And making sure that all of the preparation is done in a safe and clean environment that all of our kitchens are deep cleaned on a regular basis, and that all of our team members follow the proper guidelines for food preparation. To me, that's the number one safety, in making sure that we don't cross-contaminate anything and everything is clean and fresh, and we look at expiration dates. That is super important. Sustainable, we really have to look at who can offer the best products, and they are sourced from a sustainable source, right? So our sourcing department does a really good job to bring the chefs everything that is fresh, that not necessarily comes from a huge conglomerate. And the chefs always want something that is going to give them a little edge. And that's really important in our world. And the inclusive piece, I think that we have to have something for everyone. We have to appeal to such a great audience in understanding the trends and understanding the guests and what they want and what they need. It's really important. I think that at the beginning, when the gluten or vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, all of that started to come up and take the lead on our industry, a lot of people were not really open to respecting those ideas. Mm-hmm. And you can't. It's people's needs, right? You have to understand them. You have a gluten allergy for something, or your beliefs make you a vegan or a vegetarian, so that is part of us understanding guests as people and making sure that we meet their needs to what they want. I might eat everything in the world and be happy with it. But again, that goes back to treat people how they want to be treated, mm-hmm. right? Give them what they need and what they want, not what you think is best. Understand their needs.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. I'm so impressed with your experience in the industry, and I've been to one party at one of your pools, and so I need to come back.
Yes.
So I definitely will. I do. I'll be there twice. How does everybody get a hold of you? I have the website address, right? Resorts World Las Vegas.
Yes.
And then I have on LinkedIn?
On LinkedIn or my work email, right? It's my name at RW Las Vegas.
Okay. All right. Okay.
So
your name, and is it your name Cinthia Pedroza? Or just, at
RW
Las Vegas.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. Is there any parting notes that you want to say to anybody on women to end Women's History Month?
Keep pushing, but don't get crazy. Thank you so very much for having me. This was very enjoyable. I appreciate you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Cinthia. I appreciate you too. Everybody, next week is Food Waste Awareness Week. And so I'm going to bring you some information about that. I'm doing a webinar on that. So I will send you some information on that. But I'm here every Wednesday. Well, today's Thursday. I'm here every Wednesday at 12 o'clock Eastern. And until then, stay safe and eat well. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Eating at a Meeting podcast, where every meal matters. I'm Tracy Stuckrath, your food and beverage inclusion expert. Call me and let's get started right now on creating safe and inclusive food and beverage experiences for your customers, your employees, and your communities. Share the podcast with your friends and colleagues at our Eating at a Meeting Facebook page and on all podcast platforms. To learn more about me and receive valuable information, go to tracystuckrath.com. And if you'd like more information on how to feed engagement, nourish inclusion, and bolster your bottom line, then visit eatingatameeting.com.